I'm Paul Glumaz, and today is the 28th of August. We're laboring towards Labor Day, and I think our country, metaphorically, is going to be in some great labor as we move towards the November midterm elections. Hopefully by the time you watch this, a few days from now, what is being discussed in the U.S. media, but mostly in the Russian media, which is detailed descriptions of the plans by the White Helmets and the British intelligence to run another chemical weapons operation. And all over the Russian press, they're saying this consignment of chemicals went to these people, and they're getting ready to use them in a false flag effort. And then the U.S. is readying the Tomahawks and the various other means to launch a counterstrike. So this is being alleged by the Russians media, by the Syrian government, because they're in the process of mopping up the last remaining major stronghold of al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda and ISIS and everything else like that, which is in the province of Ibid. Now, this is, and then CNN and other U.S. media saying that there's reports from intelligence, U.S. intelligence military, that Assad is planning to launch a chemical attack in Ibid. So you have one press saying Assad is planning, you have the other press saying the British are planning, and to be followed with airstrikes from the U.S., from NATO and the U.S. forces. Now this is very, very, very serious. But more importantly, this is designed to wreck Donald Trump's ability to have a relationship with Russia as we go into the tumultuous last 2 months prior to the November 6th midterm elections. So what we're watching right now is something we've never seen before, which is that whenever you Google Donald Trump's name or anybody associated with an opposition or a defense of Donald Trump, you get all the negative feeds first. All the negative, including Donald Trump. Right? This is Google now. Google is part of the war. Google is Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms are now getting into the war and are censoring or are shadow banning. It's not just Alex Jones. It's everybody and anybody that has an opinion which is opposite to their operation. And this is all being coordinated by the British. And just as the British are coordinating the next chemical attack, which is being set up to hit Syria, they're also orchestrating the assault on Donald Trump. They are also, through the media, transforming the media into a hit operation against anyone and everyone that is supporting Trump or is remotely considering to support Trump or is remotely not going along with Trump has to go. So this is, I've never seen this this is so blatant. It's beyond belief. And yet Trump's ratings, according to the polls, and I don't trust the polls, have not changed. He He still has 45 solid, a solid 45% is what they're saying. He had a 45 solid percent as he was, you know, he's been there at 45% solid. So, but we are on the edge of war. Now, partly it's because the sanctions on Russia, which are increasing, are designed to prevent Russia from having economic activity with Europe. And the sanctions on Iran are similarly designed to prevent economic activity between Iran and Europe. The sanctions on North Korea are similarly about stopping the ability to develop the entire that entire North Pacific area in which the Korean Peninsula is a key aspect. So sanctions are really not about the things that they talk about. Sanctions are about economic warfare. The same thing with financial warfare. Financial warfare is conducted in such a manner as to collapse the currencies of countries, either by inducing capital flight, by sudden interest rates being raised in the US and Europe, or by attacking the currency such that people want to leave their currency and go into the dollar. This is the ruthless punishment of the market to those nations who still think they are nations, who are not part of George Soros's open society yet, which is everyone is in the same whirlpool of disintegration. So if you don't like George Soros and you have a government and you want to have economic development, well, we're going to punish you. And not only are we going to punish you with financial warfare, but the U.S. Justice Department, through the surveillance state which developed out of 9/11, that surveillance state has gone global, and it's not just U.S. politicians who are being blackmailed by the surveillance state, but it's also the leaders of other nations. And then when they don't behave according to the desire, or they want to get rid of them, then they have corrupt judiciary systems in those countries try to take them down, like in Brazil or in Argentina. So these are the weapons of the financial system, the City of London, which I went through in some detail last time, and I encouraged everyone, and I still encourage everyone to watch the movie that you can get on YouTube. You just go The Spider's Web, Britain's Second Empire, and that is the best thing for you to watch, because it will give you a sense of what this is. So during the period, so this is what's being done to Turkey, Argentina, Brazil, Indonesia. Russia is being hit with the same thing. Russia is not really a fully developed country. It lost a lot of development during the time of the Yeltsin period when it was looted. And so this kind of economic warfare, however, is triggering an intense discussion in China, in Russia, in India, and elsewhere for a new non-dollar system. The deputy foreign minister of Russia, Ryabkov, in response to the sanctions that were more sanctions put on Russia as a result of the so-called Skripal affair, is saying that it's now time to go to consider other alternatives to the dollar. That is, it's time to end the dollar system and go to some other alternatives. This is what these kind of attacks on a nation do. They make you want to have a different system, because so this dollar-denominated system, which is not a U.S. dollar, it's a London offshore dollar, is now being, the discussion is to have a a new system. And the new system would have to be a new fixed exchange system, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt had after the war. This is what was under discussion between LaRouche and Bill Clinton back in the 90s, and this is what was being discussed for a long time, along with the Belt and Road, what became the Belt and Road. We call it the Eurasian Land Bridge. But since we're now 5 years into the Belt and Road, and 55 heads of state of Africa have gone to China this weekend, are going to China this weekend to plan the development of Africa, and then they're coming back to the United Nations in the middle of September. Africa is going to be make a big splash in the United Nations about the beginning of their newfound optimism about the future of Africa, which was very bleak. Keep in mind that Obama, when he was last in South Africa, told South Africa that if you were to develop Africa to middle-class living standards, you'd boil the planet over. Well, that didn't go over very well with Africans because Obama was telling them to drop dead. But China is not telling them to drop dead. China is coming in with a development perspective for all of Africa, and 55 leaders of Africa will be meeting with the Chinese leadership, with Xi Jinping. And this is the new morality of China, and the fact that China is doing this and can do this is causing a profound crisis. Because if China can do it, why can't everybody else? If China's, what is different about China? Well, they're not part of this dollar system. I mean, they are in a way, but they have state credit, and they are creating through the Belt and Road the physical basis for a new fixed exchange system, which is what's going to have to occur. And this is what LaRouche has been saying for 25 years now. And organizing and meeting with these people and talking to these people and having conferences over those 25 years at various times. And so this is on the table, and what's missing and what has to come into this is the United States. Now, our perspective, the perspective I have, and the perspective of the LaRouche movement is that if you can stop the process of the coup being run against Donald Trump, then that opens the door for the U.S. calling for a new monetary system, a new financial architecture, new financial architecture. And this is the four powers. These four powers are required: the United States, China, Russia, and India. And this is what we were promoting back 20 years ago, that these four powers had to sit down and set this up. This was during the period when Clinton was favorably inclined towards that, prior to Monica Lewinsky, prior to when Clinton was broken. So the coup that took place against Clinton in 1998 with the Monica Lewinsky thing that threw him out of control, basically, of his government, until now, which is a 20-year period, the Bushes and the Obamas as well, we are now, and of course 2 years of Trump, we are now at a point where that reality, that discussion, that possibility is there. But it absolutely depends on not allowing the Democrats who've gone off the deep end from taking control of the House of Representatives. That is where we are. There's also a massive movement called the walkaway movement, where Democrats are walking away from the Democratic Party and joining the Republican Party. Not because they like the Republican Party. They are Democrats. They don't like the Republican Party. But they're walking away from the insanity of the Democratic Party. We had the experience last weekend at a state convention in Lansing, Michigan of the Republican Party of talking to a lot of the delegates who were not very happy about the Republican Party. They don't want to go out and talk about, spend less and all of the usual, Rush Limbaugh, the problem is welfare mothers and the problem is immigrants taking your money and, that kind of you know, the problem is abortion, and you know, and on and on and on and on, and you know, this sort of thing is not going to win the Republican candidates. So a lot of them are talking to us about maybe we should talk about the you know, the Belt and Road. Maybe we should talk about economics. Maybe we should talk about a new fixed exchange system. Maybe we need to talk about ending this London dollar-based system. Or maybe we should talk about LaRouche's 4 laws. Or maybe we should talk about how we're going to industrialize the world. So that there is that kind of potential receptivity that we're now picking up there. And really, the two-party system has collapsed. Instead, you have the two paradigms. You know, the old paradigm that you saw with the warrior John McCain, who the liberals are loving like they never loved anyone before. John McCain, with his sidekick Lieberman, were the essential part of getting us into Iraq. Without their efforts, the Iraq War would not have occurred just on the basis of Dick Cheney. They were the congressional counterpart, one Democrat, one Republican. And John McCain personally went to Libya, personally went to Syria, personally went there to organize the revolt against Gaddafi, to organize the revolt against Assad. He went to Ukraine to personally organize the violent Maidan revolution against the elected president of Ukraine, Yanukovych. John McCain has always been for war, for the empire, for the financial force, for the system. He and Trump had a huge. He profoundly attacked Trump because Trump said, "I want to work with Russia. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I want to end these wars, etc." You know, we spend $7 trillion in the Middle East, and yet we can't build anything in the U.S. John McCain is the man who played perhaps as the most important role of all in all of the United States in getting us into those wars. And he is being lionized in the media by the left and the liberals as the great hero, as the great patriot. I mean, millions of people have died, millions of refugees. You know, this man needs to go somewhere. And Trump is not going along. Trump is not kissing, you know, that corpse. He's not going to show up for his Ringman Memorial, and that's important. You know, he's not going to play, you know, the game of, you know, wasn't he a great guy? You know, wasn't he wonderful, and all of that. But that's the old system. That's the old system that's dying. McCain exemplifies that old system, the old paradigm, and that's what is running against. That's the issue: the old paradigm versus the new paradigm. The new paradigm is cooperation and development, like China is now working with Mexico to develop, and Trump just put together an agreement with Mexico, which is not perfect, but it massively increases the wages of Mexican workers in the auto industry, and this is actually going to be benefiting Mexico tremendously. So what's going on with Trump? And then Obrador says he wants Peña Nieto, the current president, to sign the agreement, the trade agreement. And then López Obrador is saying that when he gets in December, he and Trump have other plans to go way beyond this agreement. So here you have Trump working with the current president of Mexico and beginning to set up a very close partnership with the president coming in. One's supposed to be a socialist leftist, that's the one coming in, and the other is supposed to be the corrupt, main PRI. And yet, these people are willing to. Now, the opposite is the case in Canada, where the government is really run by a woman by the name of Chrystia Freeland, who's the foreign secretary. The putative prime minister, Justin Trudeau, is merely the mascot. This woman is running it, and her family are Ukrainian Nazis, and she is, she is very close to George Soros, very close to the Clintons, and George Soros, and she was supposed to write George Soros's biography, but she got it into Parliament instead. And this woman is totally upfront about opposing a renegotiation based upon getting rid of the investor state resolution mechanism, which is what destroys the sovereignty of nations. It's this investor state resolution mechanism that kicks these allows for corporations to sue governments for creating unfair, for causing loss of revenues because they raised the wages, they imposed a raising of wages or health care or whatever. This investor state resolution thing is one of the things that eliminates the sovereignty of nations. It was the worst aspect of NAFTA. So you have essentially the leader of the AFL-CIO, Trump, supporting the agreement that Trump made with Mexico. And this is causing a real freak out among the liberals because, they cannot count on labor. And then the African American polls of African Americans with respect to Trump is somewhere in the 35% range, which is also freaking out the liberals. So you have essentially an incredible battle ahead of us. And the media has gone absolutely ape about Trump, and all the stuff about Cohen and all the stuff about Manafort. It has nothing to do with Russia. But what they're doing is they're transferring the attack on Trump to the southern jurisdiction of New York, so that they can start to go after his personal finances, his business finances. So they're not. This is not going away. The actual assault on Trump is escalating, and Trump is not in a position to govern yet. He can do certain things. Lavrov, of the foreign minister of Russia, has come out saying that the key situation is that Donald Trump and Putin are on a discussion basis, and that if anything comes up, they can talk to each other. They have a discussion. But below that level, the United States is still at war with Russia. It's and is going to war with China. And though Trump is not committed to that, it is currently U.S. policy, and the whole revolt against Donald Trump from within the government and from within the institutions, and that is being orchestrated by the British, and that's at the core of this whole Bruce Ohr business. He was number 4 in the Justice Department, and the issue is that he maintained contact, extensive contact, 60 emails and 60 communications in the period with Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele remained very close to the British intelligence. So Christopher Steele was the channel, and the number 4 at the Justice Department, Bruce Ohr, was the conduit between the British intelligence and the FBI and the Mueller operation. So this is incredible. This is what's going on. So we are entering this period, a war of two paradigms. And coming out of the Lansing Republican Convention was the African American who won the Republican primary. He was way behind, and 2 weeks before he was endorsed by Trump, and he won the primary. And we had earlier given him our report, the 4 laws and on the Belton Road, and he came up to us and said, "I think you guys are doing a great job on the Belton Road." So there is a process we are intersecting all the Trump organized Trump layers with ideas that they need at this moment, because they don't. Their ideas aren't necessarily going to win an election, and their ideas are not necessarily going to save the country. But so we have to do that, and so therefore, your involvement in this is very important.